Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of How's the Market, Outer Banks. I'm your host Ken Batinger with Outer Banks Blue and Best Buy OBX team. Today I have the privilege to do a quick interview with Willow Kelly, insurance expert. Hi Willow.
Hi, how are you, Ken?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for taking the time to see us today.
No problem.
First question I have for you, tell me a little bit about how you got started in insurance law.
Well, I'm employed by the Outer Banks Association of Realtors and also the Outer Banks Home Builders Association as their shared government affairs liaison.
Mm-hmm.
I also serve in a volunteer position of the president of NC20, which is a coalition of 20 coastal counties, government interests, business interests, individuals, organizations, all working on issues that affect the 20 eastern North Carolina counties that fall under the Coastal Area Management Act. And insurance is the top issue. It has been for the last several years. Became very involved in 2008 when there was a homeowners insurance rate filing, which we were going to see double-digit increases yet once again. And for the past 6 years, reading thousands of pages of rate filings, government reports, et cetera, et cetera. I know more than I need to know about insurance. Considering the only thing I knew beforehand was when the premium was due and what was the due date.
That's
So
right. I think that more than qualifies
I
you.
can tell you more than you probably want to know about insurance.
Well, that brings us to my next question would be, what do you see as being the biggest issue with insurance?
Well, here on the Outer Banks and in eastern North Carolina, actually, we pay insurance on homeowners insurance based on a modeled risk, based on a projected what may happen kind of risk, unlike the rest of the state of North Carolina and unlike other areas in the United States. So we have a challenge when it comes to homeowners insurance, the increase in homeowners insurance, wind insurance, and now we're faced with increases in flood insurance, and it's the flood insurance that is going to be the most challenging for us, I believe, because of a law passed by Congress last year.
Okay. Well, that brings me to the last question that I have for you today. Flood insurance. What's it going to mean for people on the Outer Banks? What is it going to mean for people buying houses? Is it something of a major concern, or what's going on with it?
Well, Congress passed a law in 2012 called the Biggert Waters Act, named after the two people that sponsored the bill. Had nothing to do with Waters being the name of the bill. It's interesting that it was a Flood Insurance Reform Act. What that bill has done is tried to reform the National Flood Insurance Program to raise premium revenue so that the program becomes more sustainable and solvent. Hurricane Katrina was the game changer for flood insurance. The federal government went $18 billion in debt, loaned the money to the flood insurance program, and now they were looking at ways to increase the revenue in the flood insurance program. What it means to buyers here on the Outer Banks is you want to make sure you know what flood zone the house is currently located in. For the most part, it might be the same. Our last flood maps were updated in 2006. So 8 years ago, we had new flood maps, and the flood map determines the zone and what the base flood elevation is for the house. Flood insurance rates are based on those two things. Biggert Waters is causing those policyholders of older second homes, older commercial properties built before flood maps ever became effective. So we're talking about older properties from the 1970s that are going to see a 25% increase a year every year until the policy reaches the actuarial risk rate that FEMA determines for that policy. Now, for those homes that were built after flood insurance maps became effective, which means they were built, say if you had a house built in 1985, 1995, 2005, even after 2006, you were built to a flood map standard. You had to build to a flood zone and base flood elevation. You cannot be below base flood elevation. For the lifetime of the policy, you always kept the zone and the elevation from time of construction for your policy. You always paid to that risk and on that risk. So now what Biggert Waters says is, well, we know you built your house in 2005 before new flood maps became effective in 2006. The house was built in a particular zone. It could be X zone, AE zone. That map changed in 2006 to a higher risk zone. You didn't have to pay to the higher risk zone. Now, and it's called grandfathering. Biggert Waters says you lose your grandfathering. And that's where we have great concerns. We're trying to work through Congress right now to change Biggert Waters to keep the grandfathering, because homeowners, whether they're second homeowners, year-round homeowners, do not know in the future if flood maps change, how much higher their flood insurance can go. So you really have to understand what flood zone you're in, what your base flood elevation is, get an elevation certificate if you don't have one, talk to your insurance agent about this impact. And I think as we work through this process and we try to lobby Congress for some changes, they're finding out there was unintended consequences to Biggert Waters, and so I think we will see some change.
Okay, well that sounds great. I mean, for the future, what do you see? Say I bought in 2007, in 2020, are they going to change the maps again? And is this something that I have to be concerned with a new house even?
Flood maps are going to be changing in the future. Well, our last maps were updated in 2006. They will be revised and updated every so many years. And so in 2006, we saw new flood maps. We actually should see new flood maps coming out by the end of this year, preliminary flood maps. Communities in areas like Louisiana and New Jersey, after Hurricane Sandy, they've already gotten preliminary flood maps, and that's why a lot of people in those areas are very upset as to seeing the big difference in the flood zones and elevations in the areas where, in communities and where policyholders are. You're never, what Biggert Waters, with removing that grandfather clause, you're never safe. And we're seeing increases of up to 3,000% on flood insurance policies in those areas I just mentioned.
Okay.
So you need to be prudent, understand your policy, know what flood zone you're in, and again, work with us to notify legislators, whether you're here in another state, and let them know of your concerns about the Biggert Waters Flood Insurance Reform Act.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot for taking the time to come talk to us today.
Anytime.
And it also shows me the importance of hiring a good agent too that knows what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I really want to thank Willow for taking the time out to talk with me today. And as always, Outer Banks, work hard, play hard, turn your dreams to reality. Remember, stay gold.